Okay, so here's some Lincoln tape. Can't ever read in here, but the Nationalists favor strong government, 15 minutes. So really doesn't say anything on the end, except warning, don't tape it. But I'm going to tape it. So it's Britannica. We'll see if it's on YouTube or not, but I'm going to put it on there, baby. I don't see a year on there, I don't think. Do you? Well, there you go.
May 25th, 1787. In Philadelphia's Independence Hall gathered 55 men, a group that Thomas Jefferson hailed as demigods. Of these men, the noted historian Charles Beard said, "Never in the history of assemblies has there been a convention of men richer in political experience and practical knowledge. It is indeed an astounding fact that at one time so many men skilled in statecraft could be found on the very frontiers of civilization." Both Jefferson and Beard spoke, of course, of the framers of the Constitution. They were a diverse and distinguished group who met to create a new form of government for a land that had just gained its independence. With the exception of 81-year-old Benjamin Franklin, these were young men, some in their 20s. Most were college men, many were lawyers, some were merchants. More than a few were slave owners. These men brought to the task of framing a constitution many different ideas about the way the nation should be governed. There were no guarantees that they could produce a document at all, much less a document that would endure. Not all of the founding fathers, leaders of the 13 new states, were present at the Constitutional Convention. Virginian Thomas Jefferson was serving as minister to France, and Massachusetts John Adams was the American envoy to Great Britain. Adams' fiery cousin Samuel and the New York patriot John Jay had not been selected as delegates. Virginia wanted Patrick Henry to attend, but he declined, fearing that the convention would create too strong a central government. Tiny Rhode Island shared Henry's fears and sent no delegates. The framers would jokingly call the one missing state Rogues Island. Old and ailing, carried to the convention in a special chair, Dr. Franklin was there, and he warned his colleagues against arrogance.
"I cannot help expressing a wish that every member doubt a little of his own infallibility."
George Washington was present at the convention. A Virginia delegate, he was named to preside at the convention. Since 1781, a form of government had existed. The Articles of Confederation had bound together the 13 young states. These articles had authorized a Continental Congress to govern the new country, but the articles made no provisions for an executive or a judicial branch to enforce laws. Following Shays' rebellion in Massachusetts in 1786, the delegates confronted the weaknesses in the articles by writing a new constitution. As settlers moved west, states squabbled over conflicting claims to western lands. States printed their own money. Currency from North Carolina was worthless in New Hampshire and Massachusetts. Toll gates guarded state borders, and states taxed each other freely. The Continental Congress could not collect taxes from the states or from individual citizens. This made it difficult for the new nation to pay its huge war debt, especially to its ally, France. But recognizing the inadequacies of the Articles of Confederation and creating a better form of government were two entirely different matters, especially when the Constitutional Convention split into two main camps. The Nationalists favored a strong central government, while the anti-nationalists wanted as much freedom and independence for the states and for individual citizens as possible. Chief among the Nationalists was the 36-year-old Virginian James Madison. Because he played such a crucial role in shaping the final document, he became known as the father of the Constitution. Madison would later credit many heads and many hands. Still, he was remarkably active in every debate, constructive in problem solving, and tireless in record keeping. Madison kept the only written records of the convention's secret debates, an undertaking which he once admitted very nearly killed him. Jamie Madison was born in 1751 at Port Conway, Virginia, the first of 10 children in a middle-class family. His ancestors, he noted,
were not among the most wealthy of the country, but in independent and comfortable circumstances.
Like many youngsters of the time, Madison studied at home with private tutors. Small, frail, and sickly, the young Madison was not expected to live long. However, by age 18, he was strong enough to enter the College of New Jersey, now Princeton University. He graduated at the age of 20. Too sickly to fight in the Revolution, Madison plunged actively into politics, helping draft Virginia's own Constitution and Declaration of Rights, pleading eloquently for religious freedom. While serving in Virginia's first legislature, Madison began a lifelong friendship with Thomas Jefferson. Madison came to be regarded as the most able member of the Continental Congress. There he witnessed the problems of a weak central government. Though he fought for Virginia's claims to western lands, the state sometimes neglected to pay his salary, and he was often in debt. After 4 years in Congress, Madison returned to his Virginia plantation, Montpelier, to study law. From his earliest days, he hated slavery and sought a profession in which he could, as he told a friend,
depend as little as possible on the labor of slaves.
He wrote to his friend Jefferson, now in Paris, for books on the history of constitutions. He worked in his study at Montpelier on papers detailing the flaws in the Articles of Confederation. Then in 1787, he became one of Virginia's delegates to the Constitutional Convention. Next to the 6'2" fellow Virginian George Washington, the 5'4" Madison did not cut an imposing figure. Madison's giant intellect more than made up for his smaller stature. Early on, James Madison worried that the convention would either create a monarchy or divide the Union into separate nations.
Every reflecting man becomes daily more alarmed at our situation.
Madison aggravated the many Southerners who wanted Congress to continue slave trade until 1808.
20 years will produce all the mischief that can be apprehended from the liberty to import slaves.
And he argued that congressional representation should be based not on states' physical size, but on states' population.
The real difference of interests lies not between the large and small, but between the northern and southern states. The institution of slavery and its consequences form the line of discrimination.
A fellow delegate acknowledged Madison's greatness. He blends together the profound politician with a scholar. He was the best informed man on any point in debate. Edmund Randolph, another Virginian, also made his mark as a nationalist at the Constitutional Convention. Randolph attended the College of William and Mary in his native Williamsburg. There he excelled in public speaking. He later studied law. At the age of 22, Randolph joined the Continental Army. During the war, Randolph rose in rank and became an aide to General George Washington. He later returned to Williamsburg, where he helped draft Virginia's state constitution and served as Attorney General. He later became mayor of Williamsburg. In 1779, he joined Madison in the Continental Congress. For a time, he had supported a revision of the Articles of Confederation, but in pre-convention talks, he became convinced of the need for a new document. Randolph presented the Virginia Plan, which would become the foundation of the Constitution. Largely the work of Madison, the plan called for a strong central government with the three branches and the system of checks and balances that we know today. Serving on the Committee of Detail to draft the final document, Randolph wrote the first version of the United States Constitution. Gouverneur Morris of Pennsylvania, a third leading nationalist, was on the committee that produced the final version of the Constitution. Morris was a delegate from Pennsylvania, though he was born in 1752 in what is now the Bronx, New York. 3 years after his father's death, 13-year-old Gouverneur entered King's College, now Columbia University, and graduated 3 years later. By age 19, he was a practicing lawyer. Before 1775, Morris opposed breaking with Great Britain because he feared mob rule. But Morris changed his mind after the first shots were fired between England and Americans. From then on, he wholeheartedly supported the Revolution and the attempts of the Continental Congress to create national policy. In 1776, he helped write New York's Constitution, arguing for a single governor, religious toleration, and the abolition of slavery. Only on the slavery issue did he fail to convince his colleagues. As a representative of the Continental Congress, Morris was sent to inspect George Washington's troops at Valley Forge. Because of the bravery and devotion he saw there, Morris made General Washington his greatest personal hero. In 1779, Morris turned his back on a political squabble in New York and moved to Philadelphia. 8 years later, he was a Pennsylvania delegate to the Constitutional Convention. Because of a wooden leg, the result of a carriage accident, Morris was given special permission to address the convention while seated, and he was the convention's most frequent speaker, even outdoing Madison. Morris urged a strong central government.
Give the votes to the people and they will sell them to the rich.
Despite his distrust of government by the people, Morris could not tolerate slavery.
May the curse of heaven fall to the states where slavery prevails.
Some of Gouverneur Morris's fellow delegates found him fickle and cynical, but Madison found him flexible and cooperative.
To the brilliance of his genius, he added a candid surrender of his opinion and a readiness to aid in making the best of measures in which he had been overruled.
Following ratification, the father of the Constitution, James Madison, served in the new House of Representatives. In 1794, he married a young widow named Dolly Payne Todd. While Madison served President Thomas Jefferson as Secretary of State, Dolly acted as First Lady, for Jefferson was a widower. In 1808, Dolly, Washington's most celebrated hostess, became First Lady in fact. Madison, 57, began the first of his 2 terms as president. Despite frail health, James Madison would outlive every other delegate to the Constitutional Convention. When he died in retirement in 1836, he was 85. Edmund Randolph left the Constitutional Convention without signing the final document. He insisted on a second convention to consider possible state amendments. He later went on to serve President Washington, first as Attorney General and finally as Secretary of State. Gouverneur Morris returned to New York after the convention. He then served his hero George Washington as ambassador to France. Later back home, Morris championed the building of the Erie Canal that linked the Great Lakes to the Atlantic Ocean. In retrospect, the men known as the Nationalists deserve much of the credit for our Constitution. But the document might never have seen the light of day were it not for the contributions of those referred to as anti-nationalists and later the compromisers. These too were among the many heads and many hands that James Madison hailed as framers of the Constitution.